All right, got another winch off of that their low ball offer up. This is an M6000, so what I'm going to do is use this for the Samurai. A little bit smaller motor, so smaller amp draw or lower amp draw. Fellow was nice enough to include two remotes, one to keep, one to lose. See the relay box here did not have the longer power wire, so we'll make those up. Make that up out of something here. Gave us a new and got the winch cable over there. We'll probably go ahead and use a synthetic line. All right, so I'm going to show you some real quick inspection to do here on the motor end and the gearbox end. Obviously, you just start by doing a quick visual. You know, make sure your brake lever works there, and that's free spool. That's okay. It's a little sticky. We'll see if we can't free it up by re-greasing this with some synthetic grease, and we'll check how the commutator looks over here. All right, give me a few minutes. All right, a little bit of progress here. I like to use this M12 little impact ratchet. This is good enough to rip the lug nuts off of Jeeps, but it makes quick work of these Allen head bolts, and particularly if they've got some corrosion on it. The impact action helps break that up and brings them out quite well without rounding off the Allen heads, I find. Just wanted to show you how much grease Warn puts in these, because this kind of gives you a point of reference. If you look in there, that's just the factory amount of grease. You can see that, you know, there's really... They haven't even really wetted the planetary gear set. They've got all the teeth covered, you know, which is good, all the gear teeth covered, but, you know, they don't have this, this uncoated steel covered. And that's not that big of a deal, but I'm going to take a different approach. What I'm going to do is just, you know, pack this stuff in there. I'm going to go ahead and use this high temp wheel bearing grease. I think that's good enough for this application. And what I did, I just left the gasket on there. I'm just going to try to reuse what's there, and if a little bit comes out, it's no big deal. You know you have grease in it because it's leaking, right? But even with this off, you can see this is still a pretty stiff roll. So what I'll do is I'll take these sections apart and I'll look in there and see if there's anything I can clean up or maybe clearance a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next. So I'm going to go ahead and pack this with grease and let it sit to the side, and we'll move on. I laid this out like this to remind myself how it goes back together. So the idea is, you know, this one pops in there, this will pop in there, this one pops in here, this goes down there, and then this goes in like that with that up. However you take stuff apart to help you remember, you know, that's your own decision, but I'm just trying to give you a little frame of reference for how I like to take it apart. All right, I'm going to keep moving. All right, got the end bell off. So this is just a little nylon journal bearing. This is the journal right here. Feel it with your hands. It's smooth. There's no weird stuff on it. Went in and wiped this down and just clean this up. Leave this dirt in here. Keep more dirt from getting in there. I'll go ahead and throw a little bit of this on the journal bearing because there was some moly grease on there to start with. And another reason to use the impact is because there's nothing really to grab onto here, so the impact will spin that out. I'll get this side back together, and I'll take that side apart. All right, at this point I've gotten the gear end of the winch reassembled. Went ahead and took both these pieces off the drum, cleaned up the nylon journal bearings, cleaned up both sides of the drum, cleaned it up, reassembled it. Then I just wanted to do a function check. So this is free spool, and that's brake. So the gear section still works correctly. So now what I'll do is I'll take the end bell off of this motor, and I'll show you the rotor and the commutator, and we'll clean it up with some brake cleaner. All right, that's the stator disassembled. There's a little bit of insulating paper there that's kind of fallen out from heating up over the years or just normal degradation. This is the rotor, and that's the end bell. I'm not going to separate the rotor from the end bell, but if you look in there, you can see there's a total of 4 brushes, and the brushes ride on the commutator, or sometimes called the exciter. What you want to check for here is that those brushes move up and down freely. You can see the little roller spring pressing on the back of each one of those brushes. Just trying to help you see it there. What you want to do is make sure those brushes move up and down. You can see there's plenty of brush left on each one of those, and although you may not be able to see it, I can see it here. The exciter or the commutator is in good shape. I've spun it a couple times. I don't feel any rough spots. Now don't worry about the look of that rotor. There's supposed to be some insulating varnish on the outside of that rotor, so that's actually in good shape, and the splines are in good shape as well. What I'll do here is I'll take note of the spline count and I'll take note of that nameplate on the motor, and if when I'm testing this motor fails to excite and work, then I'll go ahead and order a replacement. As I understand it, the big difference on these Warn motors is the spline count on the drive end. All right. When I separated the motor from the housing, this insulative cover dropped out of here, and in looking at it, it's cracked in 2 places, and based on the pattern on the inside here, it appears to me that this is a little insulator between the rotor and the magnetized portion of the stator. And if I leave it in like that, where it's not tight around the rotor, I think it's going to rub and self-machine off, so I don't think that's the proper position. I am going to go ahead and test it without the cover on there, because I want to see, what its purpose was. But so that I know this winch works on the trail, I'm going to go ahead and order a replacement motor. So this is the irresponsible way to test your winch. Go ahead and use 10 gauge wire and no less than 3 vice grips to check the function. Looks good. We'll check the other direction. All right, I've switched the armature. Looks good.